Alright, today we're going to install the body mounts on the green truck. I've got my helper Rose here today. She's going to help me do this. And we're gonna cheat a little bit. We're not going to do the front radiator support mounts. We're going to try and just do the cab mounts that are underneath the carpet that we're going to be installing once we get all the other repairs done. So you've got one back here, you've got one up here, and so what we're going to try and do is we're going to undo all four of them, and then we're going to attempt to lift the cab up enough to slide them out. Basically we're going to pivot on the front core supports. I've never done it this way. Last time when I put in these polyurethane ones, I believe I undid all 6 of them and lifted it up more uniformly. But I'm not at a point where I want to take the radiator out, because once I do, I want to send it to a radiator shop and get it all redone. You'll see here, these still look pretty good. The front core supports, they're starting to crack, but this was a polyurethane kit. And it sounded like a really great idea. I'll never have to do it again. But I will tell you, it makes this thing ride like a tank. You feel every bump in the road, and I have not liked them since day one. Yeah, I got rid of my rocking cab. You know, I could feel it and hear it as I was driving around, especially on corners. I could feel and hear the cab moving around. It fixed that, but I did not like the ride quality. So I'm going back to a regular old rubber set, and I'm hoping we'll get a smoother ride out of it. So I'm not going to film the entire installation of these. You can see it's pretty straightforward. This one just screws into the cab on its own. There's no nut to hold. And then this bottom one, you've got to undo the nuts and hold the bolt from the top. And then you just simply lift the cab up and you slide them all in. Okay, so we've got the cab unmounted. It is working. We are able to just lift it up with the front still attached. And I'm running into a couple things I remember from last time, and I'd like to pass along these tips because they're pretty important. So here's the front assembly, here's the rear assembly. And actually it goes like that. So here's some of the stuff I'm running into. You can see we've got some differences in bolt types, like here. This one's a little different. They've got the diameters right, the lengths are a little different. This is long enough to use, but these tapers, especially on this one where it just goes into a captive nut in the cab, that's very helpful to keep you from stripping that captive nut out. So some of this original stuff we're going to retain. I'm going to reuse the bolts. I'll clean them up and give them a good coating of WD. But then you'll see, that's my daughter in the background humming. You'll see like these washers are different. Now I used the spacers from the kit last time, and you can see this is the spacer from last time. Still in good shape. Excuse me. And I don't recall there being a big difference, and there's not a big difference between these two aftermarket kits. But what is different is a lot of these spacers, like this isn't even in the kit. This is much thinner than these replacements. And here's why that's important, is all this goes, your cab sits here. Okay, so this thickness is pretty important. Once you start changing that, you're changing the height of the cab on the frame. And once you start changing the relation of the cab to the front support and vice versa, you start running into alignment issues. And this may not be enough to cause any of those issues, but I imagine it could. And so I'm just not even going to go there. I'm going to, again, clean these up, shoot some WD on them. I could pour 15 them. That would be even better. Maybe I will. And just let it dry, mounted. But you can see here, this is all ingrained from this washer. That's because I had to cut this washer off of the original rubber mount to be able to reuse it. So it just put that pattern right back on there, and it'll do the same thing here. But that's because I realized back then, the same thing I'm remembering now, is that this thickness is pretty important. So I want to pass that along, is that these kits, and I've seen this on the internet, people talking about this specifically, is where they're not exact, and so you need to pay real close attention to the engineering. And again, you know, if the hardware's fine, you know, reuse it. But some of these shims, that's where you really want to pay attention, because that's going to change the height of things. So I just wanted to pass that along before I just threw this all back into the truck, and I hope that helps you. All right, so we've got the new ones installed. No issues leaving the front radiator core supports in place. So what I ended up doing is I got up in between here with a brush, scrubbed all the loose stuff off, and then I hit it with some Rust-Oleum primer, so that, I mean, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be as good. I speak good English. It's not going to be as good as the Pour 15, but it will definitely be better than nothing. And I did the same thing with all the washers that we reused. I just simply scraped off all the loose stuff with a wire wheel and cutted them. My daughter gave me a hand. And then what I ended up doing on the bolts and the nut is I took all the rust and the galvanized stuff, I just took it off, and we just blued them. Funny story. I was telling my daughter how, like, the bluing stuff is like magic. Just the way it works, it's magic with the metal. And she proceeded to explain to me how exactly it works. And I learned a lot. And since I did, I thought I'd have her explain it to you. And she can explain. So now, what was it you told me about the bluing?
That it's not magic, it's just a chemical reaction between the metal and the chemicals.
Okay, and what were you telling me about the scientists?
The scientists had to try again and again and again. Like the rocket ships, they blew up, but they didn't have any people on them.
Okay. And that is how we ended up with bluing, the non-magic of science tests. I don't know about you guys, but when I was 6, I wouldn't have been able to explain that. So I'm sorry, she's almost 7. Anyways, there you go. 1972 C10 body mounts on the green truck.